My name is Callie Renner. I'm 31 years old, and last Thursday I sat across a mahogany conference table in downtown Nashville, in a room with floor-to-ceiling windows, a water view and 7 people in suits, and I signed my name to a $2.1 million business acquisition. My company, my signature, my name on the deed, the same name my mother once said would never amount to anything, the same name my father forgot to put on the college savings paperwork. Not by accident, by choice. I know that now. But what I want to tell you, before we get to the conference room, before the $2 million, before any of it, is what happened the night I was 9 years old, sitting on the edge of a twin bed in my Aunt Ruth's spare room in Dayton, Ohio, holding a trash bag that had everything I owned inside it. My parents had dropped me off 3 hours earlier. My mother had said, "This is just for a little while, Callie, just until things settle down." She said it the way people say things they've already decided aren't true. That was 22 years ago. I'm still waiting for things to settle down, but let me take you back to where this all began. To understand what that trash bag meant, you have to understand what our house was like before it. We lived in Dayton, Ohio, 14 Mercer Street, a yellow house with white shutters and a front porch that sagged on the left side where my father never got around to fixing it. My father's name is Dale Renner. He sold insurance, not the expensive kind, the kind where you knock on doors in neighborhoods that have given up on themselves and convince people to spend $40 a month on something they hope they never need. My mother's name is Patrice. She worked part-time at a dental office on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The rest of the time she managed the house, managed my sister, and managed the performance of being a family that had everything under control. My sister's name is Brooke. Brooke is 2 years older than me. She came out of the womb already performing, already smiling at the right people, already knowing which version of herself to show in which room. By the time I was 5, Brooke had already figured out something I wouldn't understand for another 20 years. Her parents had a favorite, and it wasn't a close race. I want to be careful here, because this isn't a story about a monster. My father wasn't cruel. My mother wasn't cold. Not exactly. They were something harder to explain. They were people who had decided somewhere along the way, without ever saying it out loud, that one daughter was their future and one daughter was their footnote. Brooke was the future. I was the footnote. And the strange thing about being a footnote is that you don't always know it right away. You just notice slowly that your name comes up less, that your achievements are acknowledged with a nod while hers get a phone call to grandma, that when there's one piece of pie left, it goes to her. Not because anyone is being intentionally cruel, just because no one thought of you first, and no one thought of you second either. I remember the exact moment I understood. I was 7 years old, 2nd grade, Mrs. Calloway's class. We had a science project, build a model of the solar system. I spent 3 weekends on it. I used styrofoam balls, acrylic paint, and fishing wire I found in the garage. I painted Saturn's rings freehand with a thin brush I bought with birthday money. I got an A+, the only A+ in the class. Mrs. Calloway sent a note home with me in a sealed envelope. I carried it all the way from school like it was made of glass. I put it on the kitchen table in front of my mother. She opened it, read it, nodded once, and set it next to the fruit bowl. "That's good, Callie." Then she went back to helping Brooke memorize lines for the school play. The note sat by the fruit bowl for 4 days. Then it disappeared under a grocery list. I never saw it again. 3 weeks later, Brooke got a B+ on a history test. My mother called my grandmother that same evening. "Mom, you should have seen her. She studied so hard. She really is something special." I was sitting on the stairs. I heard every word. I went to my room, opened my desk drawer, and looked at my A+ science test I'd saved for myself. I folded it in half, then in half again. Then I put it at the very bottom of the drawer, under everything else. I didn't show my parents another grade after that. Not for a long time. I was 9 years old when everything shifted. Not dramatically, not with a fight or a slammed door or a single terrible moment I could point to and say, "There, that's when it happened." It happened the way most important things happen in families. Quietly, over a weekend, without anyone asking me what I wanted. My parents had been struggling financially that year. Dale's insurance business had a bad quarter. 3 clients dropped their policies in the same month. The mortgage on 14 Mercer Street was 2 payments behind. I know this because I heard them talking through the heating vent in my bedroom floor. Our house was old. Sound traveled through it like water through paper. "We can't do this with both of them right now," my father said one night in October. "Ruth offered," my mother said. "She's been asking for months." A long pause. "Brooke has the audition in December," my father said. "We can't disrupt that." That was the whole conversation. Brooke had an audition for a youth theater program, a program that cost $200 a month. I was the disruption they couldn't afford. 3 days later, on a Saturday morning, my mother came into my room with a smile that didn't reach her eyes and told me to pack some things. We were going to visit Aunt Ruth for a little while. I asked how long. "Just until things settle down," she said. I packed what I could fit in a black trash bag. My clothes, my solar system project I'd kept on my shelf, a book about horses I'd checked out from the library 3 times because I couldn't couldn't afford to buy it. A photograph of our family from the previous Christmas. I carried the bag to the car. No one helped me lift it into the trunk. Aunt Ruth's house was 14 minutes away. I counted the traffic lights. Seven traffic lights between my bedroom and the spare room that would become my home for the next 9 years. My parents stayed for 40 minutes. My mother hugged me at the door. Her perfume was white linen. Can still smell. If I think about it too hard. Be good for Aunt Ruth, she said. We'll call you Sunday. They didn't call Sunday. They called the following Thursday. And then not again for 11 days after that. Aunt Ruth's name is Ruth Eleanor Garner. She was my father's older sister. She was 54 years old when I arrived on her doorstep with a trash bag and a library book. She never married. She worked as a bookkeeper for a plumbing supply company on the east side of Dayton. She drove a 2003 Honda Civic with a dent in the passenger door that she'd been meaning to fix since 2005. She was not a warm person in the way people mean when they say warm. She didn't bake cookies or hang inspirational signs in the kitchen or ask me how I was feeling every 5 minutes, but she was consistent. Every morning at 6:45, breakfast was on the table. Eggs and toast or oatmeal or cereal, always something real, always hot in winter. Every Sunday she drove me to the public library and let me stay for 2 hours. Every night she said the same thing before I went to bed. Lights out at 9, Callie. You've got school tomorrow. That was love in Ruth's language. Not poetry, not warmth, just showing up. Every single day, without being asked. I didn't appreciate it when I was 9. I understand it now in a way that sometimes makes me pull over my car and sit for a minute because the feeling gets too large to hold while driving. The first year was the hardest, not because Ruth was unkind, but because I spent most of it waiting. Waiting for Sunday calls that came late or not at all. Waiting for my mother to pull up in the driveway and say things had settled down. Waiting to go back to my yellow house on Mercer Street where my room still had my things in it, or so I believed. When I finally went back to visit for Christmas that year, 3 months after being dropped off, my room had been converted into a home office. My solar system project was gone. My books were gone. Brooke had gotten a new bedroom set, white lacquered wood, a vanity mirror with bulb lights around the edge. I slept on the couch for 4 days and didn't say a word about the room. Neither did my parents. That was the moment I understood at 10 years old that I wasn't coming back. Not because there wasn't space, but because space had been reallocated. I went back to Ruth's house on December 27th and I unpacked my trash bag properly for the first time, hung my clothes in the closet, put my library book on the nightstand. I made the spare room mine, because no one else was going to do it for me. School became my structure. I couldn't control what happened at home at either home, but I could control what happened in a classroom. By 5th grade I was reading 3 grade levels ahead. By 7th grade I was taking 8th grade math. My teachers noticed. Mrs. Patterson, my 7th grade English teacher, pulled me aside after class one afternoon. Callie, she said, have you ever thought about what you want to study in college? I was 12 years old. No adult had ever asked me that question before. I didn't know what to say, so I told her the truth. I don't know if college is an option for me. She looked at me for a long moment. Why not? I don't think anyone's saving money for that. She didn't flinch. She didn't give me a speech about believing in myself. She just nodded, wrote something on a notepad and handed it to me. It was a list of 3 scholarship programs for middle school students to start tracking. Start now, she said. Don't wait for someone else to plan your future. I folded that piece of paper and put it in my desk drawer, right next to the A+ science note from 2nd grade. Some things you keep, even when no one else remembers them. The phone calls from my parents got shorter over the years. By the time I was 12, we were down to once a month, sometimes less. My mother would ask how school was. I would say fine. She would tell me what Brooke was doing. A new dance recital, a lead role in the school play, a summer program at Ohio State for gifted students. She never asked what I was doing with the same energy. My father rarely got on the phone at all. When he did, he said things like, you being good for Ruth? You staying out of trouble? Good girl. 3 sentences. Then the phone back to my mother. Then the call ending. I stopped counting on those calls sometime around age 13. Not because I gave up, because I decided something more important. I decided I was going to build something they couldn't ignore. Not for them, for me. Before I keep going, I want to stop here for just a moment. If you grew up feeling like the invisible one, the one who never got the phone call to grandma, the one whose room got turned into a home office, if you know what it means to pack your life into a trash bag and count traffic lights on the way to someone else's house, drop the word "seen" in the comments below. Just that one word, because I want to know you're out there. I read every single comment, every one, and if this story is already hitting something real in you, please subscribe to Orphan Origins, because every child who was left behind deserves to have their story told. Now, let's keep going, because it gets harder before it gets better. And then, it gets better in ways I never expected. Aunt Ruth didn't talk much about feelings, but in the spring of my freshman year of high school she did something that I think about almost every day now. She came home from work on a Tuesday evening evening, set her purse on the counter, and slid a brochure across the kitchen table without saying a word. Dayton Business Academy, Summer Entrepreneurship Program. Ages 14 to 18. Tuition, $0. Application required. I looked up at her. She was already opening the refrigerator. Applications due Friday, she said. I filled out my part already. That was it. No speech. No encouragement. No, you can do this, Callie. Just a brochure. And a deadline. I applied that night at the kitchen table, while Ruth watched the evening news in the next room. I got in 2 weeks later. That summer changed everything. The Dayton Business Academy met every weekday for 6 weeks in a classroom above a hardware store on 5th Street. 12 students, 2 instructors, a retired accountant named Gerald Marsh and a woman named Sandra Okafor who had built and sold 2 small businesses before the age of 40. Sandra Okafor was the first person I ever met who looked at me, really looked, and said, "You think like someone who builds things. Do you know that?" I was 14 years old. I didn't know that. She taught us how to read a profit and loss statement, how to write a 1-page business plan, how to identify a gap in a market and build something to fill it. I absorbed everything, not because I was the smartest person in that room, but because I was the most hungry. By the end of the 6 weeks, I had written a 12-page business plan for a small tutoring service targeting middle school students in low-income neighborhoods, students like the ones I'd grown up around, students whose parents couldn't afford $400 an hour SAT prep. Sandra read the whole thing. Then she stapled her business card to the front page and handed it back. "Keep this," she said. "Call me when you're ready to do something real with it." I kept it for 7 years. High school passed the way things pass when you are building quietly and no one is watching. I tutored 3 students my sophomore year for $8 an hour. By junior year I had 11 students and had raised my rate to $15. By senior year I had a waiting list. I opened a basic business checking account at the credit union on Oak Street when I was 17. Ruth co-signed. She didn't make a big deal of it. She just brought her ID and her reading glasses and signed where the banker pointed. In the car on the way home she said, "Don't let the balance go below $50. Banks charge you for that." That was her version of a business lecture. I didn't let it go below $50. Not once. My parents came to my high school graduation. I had not seen them in 14 months. My mother wore a yellow dress. She looked older than I remembered. My father's hair had gone mostly gray. Brooke wasn't there. She was at a weekend retreat for her sorority at Ohio University. After the ceremony, my mother hugged me and said I looked beautiful. My father shook my hand. "You turned out all right," he said. That was it. You turned out all right. 22 months of near silence. 14 years of birthday cards that came 3 days late if they came at all. A room that got turned into a home office. "You turned out all right." Thanked him. Then I went back
She
to
wrote
Ruth's
something
house,
on a notepad,
sat at the kitchen table,
"There's a
and
small
looked at my
business
acceptance
grant
letter
through the
from Tennessee
State
Emerging
University.
Entrepreneur Fund. Full
She said,
academic scholarship.
"Application
business
opens
program
in March.
that had been sitting
I'll
in a
write your
folder since
recommendation."
March.
I
I
got the
hadn't told
grant.
my parents.
$18,000.
Not because I was hiding it.
April
Because they
2016.
hadn't asked. I was
I left
23
for
years
Nashville
old.
in August of
I
2012.
incorporated Renner Career
Ruth
Solutions.
drove me in the Honda with the
LLC on a
dented
Thursday
passenger door.
afternoon at the
We
county
didn't talk
clerk's
much on the
office in
drive.
Nashville. Ruth wasn't
The
a
filing
talker,
fee was $300.
but somewhere past Louisville, she
I
paid
paid
it
into
from
her
the business
purse without
account
taking
I'd
her
opened
eyes
the
off
week
the
before
road and
put something on the
Starting
center
balance,
console.
$17,700.
Don't open it until I'm gone.
I called Ruth
she
that
said.
night.
I put
I
it in my
started the
jacket
company.
pocket. I said.
At the dormitory, she helped me
Don't
carry
let the
2
bags
bags
go
up one
below
flight of
$50.
stairs.
She
She
said.
looked around the room.
I laughed until I
Small
cried.
cinder block walls.
It was the first time
a window
I'd laughed
that faced
like
a
that in a
parking
long
lot.
time, and nodded
The
once
first
like
year
she
of Renner
approved.
Career Solutions
Then she
was
hugged
exactly
me
as hard as
Ruth
I
was not a
expected and
hugger.
harder than I wanted.
It lasted about 4
I had
seconds.
4 clients in month
He patted
1.
my back twice,
6 in
the way
month
people
2.
do when they're not
By
sure
month
how long
6
a
I
hug
had
is supposed to
22
be.
active clients
Then
and
she
had
picked
hired
up my
my
purse
first
and
part-time
walked back down the
contractor.
stairs.
A woman
I
named
watched her
Josephine
Honda
Clark
pull
who
out
had
of
an
the parking
HR
lot.
background and the
Then
kind
I
of
sat
calm,
on the edge of the
steady
dormitory
presence
bed
that made
and opened
nervous
the
first-generation
envelope.
students feel
Inside,
like everything was going
$600
to be
in
okay.
cash.
Every
Josephine
bill
became
flat,
my
facing
first
the
real
same
business
direction
partner.
the way Ruth
She also
organized
became one of
everything.
my closest
And
friends.
a note card.
We worked
Her
out of a
handwriting
single
was
rented
small and
office on
precise.
Demonbrun Street.
For emergencies
$650
You
a
know
month.
what an emergency
One
is.
desk, 2
Or,
chairs, a printer that
was
jammed
all.
every third
I held the
page.
note card for
By
a long
year 2 we
time.
had moved to
Then
a
I
larger
put the cash
space.
in my desk
By
drawer,
year
rubber
3 we
banded,
had
and I
7
started
full-time
unpacking.
employees and had
Tennessee
served over
State
400
University's
students
business
across
program was
Tennessee
harder
and
than
Kentucky.
anything I'd
By
encountered
year
before.
4, 2020,
And I had never been more
we were
alive.
at $380,000
I studied accounting,
in
marketing,
annual
operations,
revenue.
supply chain
Not $2
management.
million.
I took an
Not
extra
yet,
course in contract
but I could
law
see
my
it from where
sophomore
I was
year because
standing.
Sandra Okafor's
I need to tell
voice
you
was
about the
still in
phone
the back
call
of my
I got
head
in
telling me
January
to
of
understand the paper
2019.
before I sign it.
I was sitting at
I
my
worked
desk on
20
a
hours
Tuesday
a week
morning,
at a coffee shop
reviewing
called
a contract
Cornerstone
with a
on
community
Charlotte
college
Avenue.
in Memphis
Not
that
because
wanted
I
to
had
bring
to,
Renner Career
the scholarship
Solutions
covered
in as a
tuition
campus
and
partner.
housing.
My
But because
phone
I
rang.
wanted the discipline
Dayton
of it.
area code.
The structure.
My mother.
I'd been
I
building
stared at it
structure
for
for
2
myself
rings.
since I was
Then
9
I
years
answered.
old. I
Callie.
wasn't about to stop.
Her voice was different.
Junior year I reached back
Smaller.
out to Sandra Okafor.
How are you?
She remembered
heard me immediately.
How are
Callie
you?
Renner, she
Your
said.
father and I have
7
been
years.
talking.
You
Pause.
ready? Brooke is.
Almost,
She's going through
I
some
said.
things. I
Her
graduate in
husband
14
left.
months. She lost
But I
her
want to
job at
start
the marketing
planning
firm.
now.
She
She's-
laughed.
We're worried
Come
about
to
her.
Nashville. I
She
waited.
said.
I
She
know
needs
people
some
there.
help getting back on her
I was
feet.
already in Nashville.
And we thought,
you
some
work in
things
that
align
career
when the
field,
time is
right?
right.
Helping
Senior
people
year,
find
I
jobs.
wrote my thesis on
I
a
sat
gap I
very
had
still.
identified in the
You want me
tutoring
to help
market.
Brooke find a job?
Not just academic
She's your
tutoring,
sister,
but career
Callie.
skills
And you
tutoring
know
for
people.
first-generation
You've
college
built something
students.
down there.
Students who
She
had
said
the
it
grades
like she
but
was
didn't know
reading
how
from
to
a
write a
note card.
resume, interview
Like
for a
she'd
job,
rehearsed it.
negotiate a
Thought about the
salary,
trash
or read an
bag.
employment
The
contract.
7 traffic lights.
Students like me,
The home office
students
where
like
my
the
room
ones
used
I'd
to
grown
be.
up with in Dayton.
The graduation
My
handshake.
thesis advisor,
The phone
Dr.
calls that
Pamela
came late
Whitcross,
or not at all.
read the full
I
draft
thought about
and
all
called
of
me
it.
into her office
And then I
on a
said the thing
Wednesday
I had
afternoon.
decided years ago
This
I would
isn't
say
just
if this
an
moment
academic
ever came.
paper, she said.
Send me her resume,
I
Mom.
know,
I'll
said.
take a look.
This is a business
Not for
plan.
them.
Not
I
because they
know,
deserved
I
it.
said again.
Because I had
She
spent
looked
20
at me
years
over her
becoming someone
glasses.
who helps people
How
build
much
their
seed
futures.
money do you need to launch
I wasn't
a
going to
pilot?
stop doing that
I
just
had a
because
number
it got
ready.
complicated.
I'd been working
I did
on it
help
for 6
Brooke.
months.
I want to be honest about that.
$18,000.
I reviewed her
said.
resume. I identified 3 companies that matched her background. I made 2 phone calls on her behalf. Not favors, just professional referrals. She got a position at a healthcare communications firm in Columbus 6 weeks later. He sent me a text. Thanks. Appreciate it. That was all. My mother called the following Sunday. Brooke's so relieved, she said. She's really doing well. He did not say, and you made that happen. He did not say, we're sorry we never did this for you. She said Brooke was relieved. I said that was great. Then I went back to work. I need to pause here again, because I know some of you are sitting with something right now. Maybe you helped the very people who left you behind. Maybe you showed up for the ones who never showed up for you. And maybe like me you did it anyway. Not because it was easy, but because that's who you decided to be. If that's you, if you've ever chosen grace over bitterness even when bitterness would have been so much easier, type the word grace in the comments. I mean it. I read every single one. And if someone in your life needs to hear a story like this today, share this video. Because you never know whose spare room someone might be sleeping in right now, wondering if anyone sees them. Subscribe to Orphan Origins. Every story here is real. Every one matters. Now let's get to the part you've been waiting for. October 2023. Renner Career Solutions had just closed its series of funding round. $1.4 million from a Nashville-based impact investment fund called Sycamore Growth Partners. Combined with our existing revenue and assets, the company was valued at $2.1 million. We had 19 full-time employees. We had served 3,200 students across 8 states. We had 3 pending contracts with state workforce development agencies in Tennessee, Georgia, and Ohio. That's the one I want to tell you about. The Ohio contract came through a state workforce conference in Columbus in September 2023. A 3-day event. Government officials, nonprofit leaders, workforce development professionals from across the state. I was on a panel, First Generation Workforce Pathways. Scaling What Works. I almost didn't go. Josephine had to talk me into it. Columbus, Callie. You grew up an hour from there. I know, I said. So that's complicated. Go anyway, she said. I went. The panel was on the second day of the conference. 4 panelists, a moderator, maybe 200 people in the audience. I wore a navy blazer I'd bought in 2021 for a pitch meeting. My hair was down. I had notes on my phone but I didn't look at them once. I talked about Dayton. I talked about Aunt Ruth driving me to the library every Sunday. I talked about Mrs. Patterson handing me a list of scholarship programs when I was 12 years old. I talked about Sandra Okafor saying you think like someone who builds things. I didn't plan to say any of that. It just came out. The room was very quiet while I talked. Not the uncomfortable kind of quiet. The kind where people are holding still because they don't want to interrupt something true. When the panel ended, there was a reception in the main hall. I was standing near the windows with a glass of water. I don't drink at professional events, a rule I made for myself years ago, when I heard a voice behind me. Callie. I turned around. My mother was standing 6 feet away. She was with a man I didn't recognize at first, and then I did. My father. He looked smaller than I remembered. They both did. I learned later that my mother had seen the conference agenda online. She lived 45 minutes from Columbus now. They'd moved from Dayton 3 years ago. She'd registered for the conference 2 weeks earlier. She hadn't told me she was coming. She'd watched the entire panel from the back row. My father stood slightly behind her, the way people stand when they're not sure if they're allowed to be somewhere. You were wonderful up there, my mother said. Her voice was careful, like she was carrying something fragile. I looked at her, then at my father, then back at her. Thank you, I said. I didn't know you were here. We didn't want to. We didn't know if you'd want us to come. A pause. My father cleared his throat. We've been reading about your company, he said. In the Dayton paper. They did a piece on you in August. I know, I said. I saw it. You've built something.
something, he said. He said it quietly, not the way he'd said you turned out all right at my graduation, not a dismissal wrapped in a compliment. He said it like a man who understood, finally, what those words actually meant. Yes, I said, I have. Silence. Around us the reception continued. Glasses clinked. People laughed. A woman near the door called out someone's name. My mother's eyes were wet. Callie, Mom. I said it gently. Not here. She closed her mouth, nodded. Okay, she said. Okay. We had dinner the following evening. A restaurant in downtown Columbus. Small place. Quiet. I chose it. I drove there alone. Josephine had offered to come. I told her no. This was mine to do. We sat at a corner table, the three of us, and we talked for 2 hours and 40 minutes. Not everything was said. Not everything needed to be. But my father said one thing that I've thought about almost every day since. He was looking at the table when he said it. Not at me. When we left you at Ruth's, I told myself it was temporary. I told myself we'd come back for you. A pause. I knew by Christmas that first year that we weren't going to. But I didn't know how to fix what I'd done, so I just kept not fixing it. He looked up. That's not an excuse. I know it's not an excuse. I looked at my father for a long moment. He was 63 years old. His hands on the table looked like an old man's hands. The gray hair had gone mostly white at the temples. I know it's not, I said. That was all. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But not a door slammed either. Just the truth, sitting between us at a corner table in Columbus, finally taking up the space it always deserved. I flew back to Nashville 2 days later. The Ohio State contract was signed in November 2023. $340,000. Our largest single contract to date. We opened a satellite office in Columbus in February 2024. I go there once a month. My mother and I have had dinner 4 times since the conference. My father came once. We don't talk on the phone every Sunday. We're not that family. We will probably never be that family. But last March, my mother sent me something in the mail. A card. On the front, just a photograph of a yellow house with white shutters. Not our house. Just one that looked like it. Inside, her handwriting. I found your 2nd grade science project note. It was in a box in the garage. I've had it for 24 years. I'm sorry I didn't say more when it mattered. Mom. I sat in my kitchen in Nashville for a long time with that card. Outside, the afternoon light was coming through the window the way it does in October. Gold and low and long. I thought about the 7 traffic lights. I thought about Ruth's Honda with the dented door. I thought about the $600 in flat, organized bills and the note card that said for emergencies only. You know what an emergency is. Ruth passed away in 2021. Kidney failure. She was in the hospital for 11 days. I flew to Dayton and stayed for 3 weeks. I was with her at the end, the same way I was with her at the beginning. Just the 2 of us. No ceremony, no performance. She left me her Honda. Still had the dent. I kept it for a year before I donated it. But I kept the note card. It's in my desk drawer in Nashville, right next to a folded piece of paper. An A+ science project note from 2nd grade, soft at the creases from being folded and unfolded over 20 years. Some things you keep. Here is what I know now that I didn't know at 9 years old, sitting on the edge of a twin bed with a trash bag at my feet. The people who leave you are not the authors of your story. They are just the reason the story starts the way it does. The rest, every traffic light you count, every library trip on a Sunday, every A+ you fold and put in a drawer because no one noticed, that's yours. That's the part they can't take. And here is what I want to say directly to you. If you grew up in a spare room that wasn't supposed to be permanent, if you were the one they didn't plan the college savings for, if your room became an office while you were still figuring out who you were, you are not what they decided you were. You are what you built after. I built a $2.1 million company, but that's not the thing I'm most proud of. I'm most proud of the fact that I stayed kind, that I helped Brooke find a job even when she'd never once asked what I was doing with my life, that I had dinner with my parents in Columbus instead of letting the silence calcify into something permanent, that I became someone Ruth would recognize, someone she'd drive to the library for, someone she'd co-sign a bank account for without making a speech about it. They left me behind, but they could not take Ruth's Sunday drives. They could not take Mrs. Patterson's notepad. They could not take Sandra Okafor's business card, stapled to a 12-page plan written by a 14-year-old girl who was hungry enough to build something real. They left me behind, but everything I needed came from the people who stayed. If you were raised without your parents, if you know what it means to pack your life in a bag and count the traffic lights to someone else's house, this channel was built for you. My name is Callie Renner. I'm 31 years old, and I am exactly who I was always going to be. This has been Orphan Origins. Like this video, subscribe, and if you want to share your own origin story, drop it in the comments. We read every single one.